Hello, everyone. So today's video's topic and transmission is, again, a very interesting, controversial topic. A lot of people are confused about the right path in their life, because a lot of people nowadays are awakening to this sort of, it's not even awakening, it's more like they perceive that internal, urge to know, to realize why they're here, what's the point of their life, how to evolve and ascend. And certainly this projected reality offers us a lot of opportunities, because we have the whole market of different philosophies, teachings, teachers, ideas. And when one doesn't have a reference point of what to look for, there is an obvious confusion and somehow trial and error situation where people just go into different schools or throw themselves into some practices without really understanding what they do. And what I'm trying to say today is, for the past many thousands of years, we've developed this sort of an imbalanced idea of spirituality, of course, which is a reflection of our imbalanced collective existence, as we are the collective consciousness. Multidimensional on different frequency levels, but still, as a whole, we are that. And our collective state of being reflects our also internal turmoils, our search, our confusion. And so oftentimes I'm asked about the right path, meaning how to know the right path. We see people go to Himalayas, people go to India, people go to Latin America, people go to Africa and all over the place. And there are different traditions. And throughout the downward cycle, we have created this idea that in order to develop spiritually, in order to evolve, in order to realize oneself, in order to get enlightened, supposedly, and again, enlightenment is not quite well understood, but in simple words, in order to awaken to the subtle reality of ourselves, to the spiritual body, to that immortal body or immortal essence or light body or whatever you may call it, it's one and the same thing though. In order for that to happen, and not only to awaken, but also after that awakening to be able to refine oneself to that degree where the physical existence, the projected, currently known paradigm will not be affecting one's sort of realization of self. So in order for that to happen, we have, for some reason, developed these ideas that we have to be alone, that we have to be isolated, that we have to go to isolated places, that we have to go and serve some drug addicts who wear loincloths or smoke ganja, weed, who offer us some kind of other drugs for supposedly paranormal experiences. Or we're supposed to go to some shamans and drink something in order to have some kind of out-of-body experiences or the experience of subtle reality. Well, all of these paths are delusional, they're dead ends, because at the core, there is no self-refinement. An experience does not define one's sort of established perception of self. And when we speak in terms of evolution, we speak about the establishment in a certain state of being mind in a certain state of body. And the mind and the body supposed to be in alignment. Well, everything is consciousness, whether we separate it through human notions into mind and emotions and body. But the emotions and thoughts are the karmic residue. They're the disease of the individual and the collective being. And even though you've taken it all for normality, including your life being a short span of existence in a diseased body with a diseased, corrupt mind, consciousness. And so because of all that, we do not have somehow a wholesome idea of what spiritual evolution is supposed to be. And so we escape. We've created these modalities of escapism. And then we call it yoga, we call it spiritual evolution, we call it awakening, when it has nothing to do with that. And the point of this transmission is not to please anyone. The point is to offer a perspective and a direct experience of that, to share the direct experience, because a lot of people talk, but their words carry no charge. There is no essence. They're devoid of essence. And people can say whatever they can say. They can appear the way they choose to appear. They can wear whatever they choose to wear. Their frequency is of different kind. It doesn't match what they say. So our frequency never lies. And if you want to come across a true teaching, look in terms of frequency. But very often our own frequency is low. And so we tend to connect to teachings through that shadow side of us, which is the low frequency. We also tend to go into teachings which serve our idea, our premeditated idea what spirituality is supposed to be. And so we come across all these different beings who supposedly are spiritually evolved, or they are going to give us some sort of a evolution experience of teaching. And yet these beings are deeply corrupt, cursed, unable to be that which they are talking about. It's like wishful thinking for them, and yet they can appear as some sort of representations of some type of limited spiritual paradigm. And so what I was trying to say today and convey the message about the fact that when we, let's say, we go and meet certain people, some people say, oh, I met this sadhu, I met this monk, I met this priest, and so they're living in celibacy, so they must be automatically enlightened and automatically, evolved, and that yet they're rolling in the mud. To share with you my perspective, I would say all these people, whether they are monks or nuns, whether they are, and in their greatest majority, certainly in every situation, in every circumstance, there are exceptions, but in their greatest majority, these are unfortunate, cursed beings, to be in that imbalanced state within creation. And imbalanced state means something that is not aligned with the natural existence within creation. And everything in creation is about balance. So when we experience certain anomalies, such as, for example, renunciation, this external renunciation that deludes people, when people run away from their external circumstances, supposedly the world, with the purpose to spiritually evolve. That's an absolute delusion. Delusion because the world is your body, which is an extension of the corrupt seed within consciousness. So how can you run away from it? You can relocate it, you can delude it, you can dress it up in a certain attire or clothing, and yet the core, the essence will be the same. Tormented, diseased, decaying, and heading towards the unnatural death. So these spiritual paradigms are very immature. They are based on the dead ideas of spirituality, dead because there are no living vessels that carry the seed, the frequency of enlightenment. And yet they continue repeating someone else's experiences by trying to dress up like them, by trying to repeat what they read in scriptures, by trying to do what everyone else does instead of questioning. An awakened consciousness questions. When you come across such beings, and I'm not saying that highly evolved light beings may sometimes appear as a sadhu or some sort of a ascetic or a person who is supposedly secluded, but it's only an appearance within the projection, which can last for minutes to hours, and it's only for the purpose of testing someone. In reality, no light beings have ever escaped from reality. They embrace the world, embrace creation on all levels, and refine themselves. To refine themselves means they witness their corruption. They witness their limitations. And so all these ideas are corruption limitations, negative transmissions that narrow down or dispersed one's unlimited conscious being. And so when you think that you come across spiritual beings who have spent years and years staying in seclusion and that they are holy and they're going to grant you something, awaken you, enlighten, you are also on the path of delusion. Because in this world, everyone is for themselves in terms of spiritual evolution and being. When we refine ourselves, definitely we contribute to the refinement and evolution of not only ourselves, but our bloodlines, ancestral lines. But until then, we have to face our internal being, which is reactive, which is carrying all these limited ideas and thoughts, and which is deluding itself by entertaining so-called normal thoughts and emotions. An enlightened being is thoughtless and emotionless, period. They don't need to show anything. They are by frequency. Whether they say or keep silence, they are that. And yet when someone comes across that being, they won't be able to tell the difference between a charlatan and an enlightened being because there's no reference point. And how to get that reference point is to awaken to one's higher reality within. When you perceive yoga as a being, as the natural, unlimited existence, you get a reference point. You're not great, you just get a reference point, which helps you to initiate this process of self-refinement where you can let go of your limitations, of these boxes in which you put yourself, whether in the name of spirituality or in whichever else name. And those who are, as you witness them, in this unfortunate state where they are secluded, isolated in the name of spirituality, do not look at it as the phenomena of greatness and spiritual attainment. Look at it as spiritual curse. All of these beings, in their greatest majority, are spiritually cursed. That's why they are experiencing an imbalanced as a sort of a karmic distortion. But it's not, you can look at it as a punishment, but you can also look at it as an opportunity. And the best way to look at it is as an opportunity, because it's an opportunity to actually dissolve this seed that keeps them in that prison, self-created or created by circumstances. their choices. And so when we look at these beings, we should understand that they wouldn't be beggars and wandering around the way they do. They wouldn't be in that misaligned, imbalanced state if they were truly evolved, of higher frequency, and aligned with creation. To be aligned with creation means to be in a state of abundance, from within and from without. When we dissolve limitations, we gain access to the inexhaustible energy. And that's the whole purpose. Because how to tell the light being or enlightened being from a beggar who's searching for spirituality or looking for evolution in that miserable cursed state, smoking ganja, weed, taking drugs, stealing, adjusting, homeless. And the difference is frequency, the emanation. A higher being does not roll in the filth. They may wear simple clothes. They may maybe have less because of choice, not because of possibilities that they or capacity that they have within. So there is a big difference between people who escape because of their distortions and false ideas and beings who choose to live in a simple way simply because they are unbound from this reality, and yet their capacity is to have everything, and they can have everything anytime. They don't roll in the filth, in the mud. Appearance deludes. Their essence doesn't. And so as long as we look at appearances, as long as we look at people through these ideas that if they're wearing dirty clothes and smoking weed, that they are Shiva devotees, or we look at people because they wear certain robes and belong to certain confessions, religious groups and cults, that they are enlightened beings, we are just confirming our own delusional limitations. And as long as we entertain them, we will never come across true teaching or true evolution. And true evolution does not even need to be proved, because the proof is in the pudding, right? It doesn't need to be proved. The essence emanates. The frequency is there. It means the teaching is living. Are these cursed beings carry a living teaching? And the answer is no. Their emanation is not of that nature. Yeah, they perform rituals. They make pacts with spirits and different low-dimensional or low-frequency deities. They may have this sort of mesmerizing, hypnotizing eyes, but this is demonic frequency. And when you don't know, have reference point of what demonic frequency is, you'll be deluded and most probably will fall. And if you fall only because you are of the same kind, or there is the same current, the hook within your own soul onto which that frequency hooks. And that's what I'm saying again and again. The frequency doesn't lie, but the words do. The words can lie, the words can mislead, the words can, impress. Spirituality is never about words, never about attire, never about seclusion or imbalanced paradigms of existence. Spirituality is about balance, and balance is frequency. It's an alignment of the body with a high existence. And when this alignment is there, one glows. One is effulgent. One is an exalted state of being, because that exaltation is not taken from the projected reality, but from the higher existence. all within creation is one way or the other is a form of projection, but certain forms of projection are much subtler and high in frequency, so they're invisible, and we consider them as more advanced. But we don't need to speak about wholesomeness of existence when we are rolling in the mud and limited in our personal perception and realization. When someone knows who they are, they don't need the external reality to validate themselves, to prove themselves, to follow anything, because their spirituality is refined to the natural being. From the state of, I know this or that, from the state of intellectualization, conceptualization, holding on to all these different ideas and paradigms and feeling good about yourself, the natural spirituality shatters it all, because it's direct experience of the higher being. And the higher being is called such because it's beyond the frequency of intellectual perception, essential experiences, because it's just the higher being. And some of you ask me about thoughts and emotions. Thoughts and emotions is the disease for consciousness. So when we speak in terms of evolution refinement, if you're truly refined, you'll be less and less having thoughts and emotions, or these limited in energy and time clusters of within the collective consciousness will no longer have access to, because you've dissolved through this refinement all the connections with them. So they won't have any grip. They won't have any link to travel into your personal space of consciousness. So true spirituality is not about the destruction or dissolution of the persona in that kind of sense, or individuality. Yeah, persona is a different actual thing than individuality, but these are just words. The evolution means you become energetically autonomous, so your identity shifts from a limited idea, which is based on emotions and thoughts of yourself and others, into this unlimited sense that you are a immortal light being, unlimited. And the more you established in that, the more humble you appear within the projection. And the more all-knowing and selfish you appear within the projection, it means the more limited you are in a higher sense. So, when we refine, whatever we know comes directly from the higher awareness. It's not a collective thought or emotion. It's knowing. Again, knowledge with a capital K is not the same as information. That's why I use the term self-born knowledge, because it originates from the higher awareness. The more your awareness is expanded or deepened, whichever way again you want to express it, the more you just are connected with the higher space, and yet you can still witness the lower frequency spaces. And so you know. That's why we know that beings who have been refined, deeply refined and truly enlightened, are omniscient and omnipresent for the limited, or from the limited consciousness standpoint, because they perceive everything. Obviously, because they are beyond that limited timeline. And the limited timeline entertains just low frequency energies of emotional and thought nature. There's just waves within the space that the evolved consciousness can just perceive very easily. But once you are limited and you are in that, bog of thoughts and emotions, unrefined, you can't perceive the higher frequency because that layer veils you from it. And that's why thoughts and emotions are not a normality. It's a residue, the karmic residue of the downward cycle. It's the corruption itself, that corruption that I keep on speaking about. So when one is refined, one is naturally absorbed into the pure space of consciousness, the consciousness that knows and again, knowing is more of awareness rather than knowing within a certain limited framework or paradigm. And so know that if you experience any type of imbalance, if you run away, if you escape, if you excuse your corrupt state of isolation, loneliness, and inability to connect to people in a proper way as a spiritual attainment, you're but delusional. Higher beings choose sometimes to remain externally as if by themselves only because they're connected with a different frequency and timeline or time-space continuum being. And yet you don't know what they are truly about. I'm speaking about the projected reality and most of the physical beings who are still bound to this projected reality. Oftentimes you're alone and isolated because you are corrupt, because it's the traumatic response. It's a reaction. If you choose to be that way by choice, truly, honestly with yourself, when you are honest with yourself, you are content in your aloneness. And it's natural for you. You just feel like that, maybe temporarily. All right, it's your choice. But when people fool themselves and impose on themselves this type of imbalanced state as being in isolation, lonely, but honestly, they don't want it, but yet they brainwash themselves through whatever religious, spiritual ideas or philosophic ideas, that's the path to delusion, and it's a dead end, spiritually speaking. When people cannot get along with others because of their frictions, because of the friction from within, because they react, they are irritated by other people, by their presence. So they have to look within and refine themselves. We cannot run away from the world, because the world is the projection, as I said, the projection of that seed which is within our consciousness and which manifests the body as we see it at this point. Curse, why I say that all these beings are cursed, because they are. Cursed meaning they've done something, they've entertained a limited idea of reality that led them to this situation, to experience these external hardships, to live in misalignment so that they can eventually find the way back to the alignment. And yet many of them fail to do so. A curse is bad, but it's also an opportunity. Every negative situation is an opportunity. The same applies to our astrological understanding. For example, certain people ask me about Saturn periods, or, the 7.5 years of Saturn, called in Vedic astrology Sadasat, or Saturn Mahadashas, the periods or sub-periods. And they're scared that, I'm heading towards the Saturn Mahadashas. Saturn is negative. Saturn is going to hurt me. Remember, if you want to truly know something, you have to understand and perceive every phenomenon as, how would I put it, as a frequency, as the energy. What does that mean? And see it as an opportunity rather than to look at it from a victimized perspective. Most of our spirituality is soaked with victimization, and we relate to the victimized spirituality much easier than we would to the real one. That's where we're stuck. I don't care what practices you do for how many decades or hundreds of years. If you're stuck at the same point, if you're decaying, disturbed by disease, by emotions and thoughts in a diseased state, and heading towards death, which is not real but premature, it means that all your actions are futile. Whatever you do is not leading you where you want to be. And where you want to be, you are to be that now. Otherwise, it's all an illusion. And so when people go through these astronomical periods, which are supposedly challenging, these periods are opportunities to perfect oneself, to embrace that frequency and cultivate it, because that frequency is predominant at this point. So it gives you an opportunity to see your shortcomings, to see other contradictive energies within your being, and to refine yourself, to perfect yourself. These are the best moments to perfect. But if you hold on to illusions, to limitations, these energies, whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, they'll push you, they'll break you to the point of humility. And only from the point of humility, your true spiritual evolution starts. Life will keep on breaking each and every one, not as a punishment, because there's no one to punish. From within, your own higher consciousness, which is your teacher, will keep on manifesting circumstances, situations, clashes, problems, so that you can recognize you're not walking along the path of your soul. You're walking hand in hand with your ego, and keeps on hurting, yet you keep on holding to it very tightly. And then you excuse yourself with all these spiritual ideas. You delude yourself, and the result is zero, no. Only if you are in a balanced state, aligned most of the time, you're humble, you're open to realize that you don't know a lot of stuff, no matter how much we know. There's so much yet to learn. If we are not in that state, if we choose to occupy a certain niche, and first of all, within ourselves, because as we are in the world, people can think of you this or that. You yourself, if you yourself do not choose to occupy any niche, but continue refining, letting go, and ascending, it will be visible. It will permeate your being, and you will heal. To heal means to be free from thoughts and emotions. And then you have the next step, which is self-cultivation, where you can actually enjoy the natural, effortless, constant state of absorption, which is, again, thoughtless and emotionless being, blissful, content, equanimous, effulgent. And by being that continuously, you cultivate yourself. It means you transform now everything, including your body. You start refining your body on a very deep level, subtle level, the level of seed, meaning cellular level. neurons, cells, everything. Becomes enlightened, absorbs that high frequency being. And the body shifts to a kind of a different vibrational level too. And vibrational level, as I said before, energy is time, is a different time and space continuum, is a different timeline. You may still appear physically as existent, but the quality of your being in that body is different. And that's the foundation. Foundation for the actual evolution, meaning realization of higher spheres of existence, knowledge, realization about the multidimensionality of creation, subtler realities, etc., etc. So this is the proper path. This is the proper way when you have foundation. Foundation is that alignment. Foundation is possible only once you've healed yourself, when you exist without thoughts and emotions. Your consciousness is immovable. And thus you permeate higher reality, or you emit that higher reality through your physically visible being or vehicle. Awareness is everything. The more limited we are in awareness, the more pitiful and miserable our physical state is. You can tell me whatever. You've met saints, past supposedly holy beings. They died, or did they? Did they die physically? And if the answer is yes, they went, evolved, or truly aligned with a higher reality, or fully integrated. I don't care how many organizations you've created and their names. True spirituality teaches us one truth. You're either dead or immortal. And I'm talking about natural, supposedly natural exit from this body. People die in agony because of the disease state that they call life. But in reality, they haven't even awakened to what life with a capital L is. You are life, but you're not aware of it. So you keep on decaying and feeding, meaning you are losing your energy by feeding the projected reality, and that's why you decay. That's why you age. And that's why you die in agony. Agony means because of energy loss. Everyone dies because of energy loss. That's what your supposedly death is, as you know it now. Yes, there are other circumstances, accidents, which are again karmic experiences. Karmic experience means it's an experience that allows to balance it all out within creation. One energetic impetus balanced with another. Everything is creation, one way or the other. But as we are within it, we have to be aware of it only, but we can't box it or put it in a certain, framework. We can only say it is. And the way we know it is only through our own mind, consciousness, and body. And the more we expand, the more we know of the subtleties of this creation. So true spirituality is being frequency, an immortal existence. If anything of that is not there, it means it's either incomplete or it's false. People like to follow. People like to listen. People like to think and entertain themselves with whatever. But why to call it spirituality? Call it man-made reality. Knowledge is not thoughts. It's awareness and being. True saints have awakened to their light essence. False saints are made by people. True joy of spiritual being is not about songs and entertainment, running around mountains and looking for God knows what. It's just there all the time. It's thoughtlessness and the state free of emotions. It's the bliss of pure awareness, the frequency of which cannot be faked. But to admit the state of delusion and disease is very difficult for the majority, because it feels or it means that that little me is crashed and crushed, shattered. Who am I then, right? But the collage of different people's thoughts and emotions and my own, what I picked up from the environment, from the projection. I'm this and that, I've learned so much, I've done so much, I've met so many people, I'm great. In my own misery, right? In my own limitation. And as long as you hold on to these limitations and paradigms, you're doomed. Enjoy the process of slow rotting alive, decaying, and heading towards the unnatural death. And yet keep on entertaining yourself with false spiritual ideas. They'll definitely lead you somewhere where you don't want to be. If you choose to bury yourself alive through falsehood, then don't wonder that sooner or later the body is buried too. Maybe burned, but it doesn't matter. One and the same result. You're either enlightened or you die like dog. Everything in this life is an opportunity. You can keep on being victimized or try to find validation to your beliefs and ideas of self and reality. Or you may look within and honestly admit who you are and what you are at this very moment. Because this is the only way to start evolving, to start healing, to start balancing. But if you like the illusion, keep on entertaining yourself. And it doesn't matter who tells you that. If you are not aware, if you do not choose to become aware of it, admit it to yourself, you have no courage to admit it and no humility to change it, you're not a spiritual aspirant and you cannot come across true teachings. You'll be gliding along the surface, fishing something out from the corrupt spiritual market of this day and age. You're corrupt and unrefined. You can't recognize higher teachings, nor you can contain them. So start from the very beginning. And yet, when you do humble down to this point to start from the very beginning, no matter how old you are, how much you've done, you actually have chance to progress much more or faster than you would if you chose to stay stuck, holding on to the idea. How so far great and yet diseased and misaligned you are. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that it brought you some clarity and food for thought, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. Frequency never lies.